You've been gaslit into believing that you will be on your antidepressants forever or any type of psychiatric medication. This is a two-part episode, and we're talking about how to taper your medications. This is part two. If you
Yeah.
haven't listened, go back to part one because you're going
Yep.
to want to combine the two.
Yeah, it
We
came
are
out
your
on
yes. Oh, yeah.
well,
Go ahead,
I just
Jen.
interrupted
It
you.
was the last episode.
Yeah, it was
So
last
we're going
episode.
right before
Yeah,
this.
May 20th. So get your ass back to that one and listen. Okay, you
Right.
continue with the intro,
Okay,
please.
sorry. We are your whistleblowing strength. Dr. Teralyn and therapist Jen, and you are listening to the Gaslit Truth Podcast.
All right.
Welcome to the piece de resistance with
Yeah, this is
medication
fantastic, isn't
tapering.
it? Yeah, part
Mhm.
2, people. Are you ready? We're on part 2 of tapering off your meds.
Yes. So, in case you guys don't know, Jen and I help people taper off medications along with a long list of other things that we help people do. But this is kind of the passionate
Mhm.
place that we are in right now. And so, deprescribing is a thing. So, we get a lot of questions, especially on social media. How do I taper my medication? And I think people want like a short answer.
They do.
They do.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I mean, because we all want a short solution to the mental health issues in the first place.
I know.
But there is not a short solution to deprescribing for many. So,
Yeah,
yes.
it takes a while, and when people reach out to me and ask me about that, I'm very honest, and I'm like, "Hi, 18 months into this process," and that's
Right.
just the liquid part, and did about 4 months of work before that, so yeah, it's a marathon. It's
Right.
actually like an ultra
Yep.
marathon, or it's the dopey challenge that you do through Disney when you do a marathon, then a half marathon, then a 5K, and then a blah 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 blah. Yeah, that's what this is, people. So
That's a thing?
yes.
Have you done
No.
that?
I've
Have
had
you
people
done
ask me to do it, and I
Oh,
say no
okay.
because I'm a lot
That's a
smarter
lot.
than that. I can't handle that. It's like, I'm not very smart in everything, but
Exactly.
that thing is a big no. So anyways,
That you know a
this is
no is a
like the
no,
dopey
and that's a
challenge,
no for you.
everybody. If you don't know what that is, look
Yes.
that shit up. It's terrible. But it's a long
It's
journey.
terrible.
And it can be terrible and it can be good. But Terry and I do this for a living. This is one of the hustles we have. We help people do this. So we're going
Mhm.
to talk about the first part of, well, part 2 actually, but the first piece of this when deprescribing, which is this idea of having one hell of a taper team.
Yes. And wait, I wanna back up real quick because as long as we're talking about
Yeah.
timing, I want people to understand timing for themselves. So the last episode was the 90 days before you actually begin
Yeah.
to taper. And so then I think it's about having realistic expectations of time when you actually start the taper. So that's the warm up
Yeah.
period and starting the taper. I tell people roughly, like this is a rough estimate, 1 to 3 months per every year you've been on
Yeah.
something. And that's a rough estimate because for some people it's less, for some people it can be more. And it also depends upon the time you're in the
Yeah.
taper, like because the last little bit usually is the hardest and it takes the
Yeah.
longest. So this is just so you have like realistic expectations of
Yes.
time. And yes, and I know lately I've been getting a lot of women in their 60s and above, and they're exhausted and they're like, I just want off. I want my life back. And when I tell them 1 to 3 months, they're a little
Yeah.
defeated because they thought it was going to be shorter and easier.
Mhm.
So then they either go, well, I guess I'll just stay on for the rest of my life, or yep, I'm ready to tackle it.
Yeah.
So, that's a rough estimate of time. And I think it's important for everyone to have like a good idea of what this might be
Mhm.
like. Okay. So like Jen, you said 18 months
Yep.
so far
18 months. Yeah,
ish,
ish.
because you said you started, 3, 4
Yep.
months ahead of
25
time.
years on, right?
Um,
So for reference, everyone,
25
25
years
years
on.
on the medication, on and off, went on and off of it. And apparently there's a couple other SSRIs in there too that I didn't I don't have recollection
Mhm.
of, but they're
Didn't
in my
remember.
records. So, but yes, about
Yep.
25 years. So when you put that into context, right?
Mhm.
That it takes a while. And my story is not everybody's story.
Mhm.
However, what we know specifically from SSRIs and SNRIs is the longer that you are on these medications, the longer it takes to taper in general. That is
Yes.
a pretty blanket statement that I think is fair to make. So it takes a while.
For some people, I will say that there are some people, and maybe they're just lack awareness of how bad it is for them, but who go off of
Yeah.
it quickly. and then they're done. And it's
It's not
like,
safe for everybody. It
okay,
absolutely is not.
all right, yeah,
That's
mhm,
that's a
yep,
bitch of this process is we want like a quick answer and it all one size fits all little like you put it in the
mhm,
box and it's not. And that I think
right,
as deprescribing consultants, that's a lot of the coaching work Terry and I do is working through the psychology behind that because it's a hard truth
mhm,
when you start to go through this and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't go down anymore. I can't go down. I've got to go back up. I've got to reinstate. So we'll talk a
right.
little bit about that within this, but the meat of today is talking about just a few main components of what happens after the 90-day warm up. So let's jump into taper team and what that is.
All right. So, taper team might look a little different for everybody,
Right?
right? And I think in the beginning phases of building your team, that your team is who can support you. And obviously, you're gonna need some type of support from your
Yeah.
prescriber because Jen and I don't prescribe and we won't deprescribe you in that
Mm-mm.
way. Um, so you're gonna need to have your prescriber on board in
Yes.
some way, which is hard. And, Jen, you can share a little bit of your story if you want to, getting your
I
prescriber on board. It's
It's really tough.
ridiculous. Like,
Statistically
mhm, it can be, not
for my
always, but
clients,
it
I
can
would
be.
say about 25% of them to 30% of them, this part's easy, right? They go in, they have the
Mhm.
conversation, they educate their provider on this because most providers have no idea. Prescribers don't know what this is.
No.
The prescriber says, "Yeah, okay, like I'm willing to look at this with you and I'm willing to look at a liquid down the road and I'm willing to look at that." Okay. And it's fine. Then there's a good 70% of the people that I work with, including myself when I started this process, where it doesn't go that way. Prescribers say
Right.
no. Prescribers, I was told that's not necessary, and I have great success just pill cutting with my clients. Um, I,
Jen, you would have
I
been
would have been, and I
institutionalized.
almost was.
Mhm.
I almost was in this process.
Even on a
I
slow
right.
taper. Yeah.
Damn, like couple
Mhm.
times. There's been a couple really bad times. So that's more common. I hear more of that. And some,
Mhm.
but the long and short to
There's there's one more common thing that has been popping up is when people go. I've had some clients go to talk to their prescriber about,
yeah,
deprescribing, right? And they'll share with them the plan, like, "Here's the
yep,
plan, here's what I wanna do." And then they'll walk out with a new prescription that has nothing to do with the
wow,
plan. It has everything to do with what the prescriber wanted the plan to be. This has happened now 2 times in the last 2 months
okay.
with people, and they don't realize that it's the
Mm.
refill, right? So the refill then changes to
Oh,
reflect what
sure,
the prescriber wants, yeah, versus what the
yeah.
client needs. So that can be another
Mhm.
battle too. So anyway, so these are
Yeah, they are,
conversations,
they are.
that
I mean, I walked in there with the Maudsley manual, and for those of you if you're on YouTube watching this, I walked in with this manual, this deprescribing guideline, and I sat it in front of
Mhm,
my prescriber after the second time of her not wanting to do this, and I opened to the pages of Lexapro, and I went through this. I said, "I want you to look at this," and I'm
yeah,
tapping on the book like something a mother would do, right? Because I was so pissed because I'm like, "This is ridiculous."
yes,
Now, for some of my clients, you get to that point, and you find yourself a new prescriber. Because, guys, the whole point of
mhm,
seeing a provider, if you think about this, the whole point is to have like an understanding and for a provider to support the client. Like that is
yeah,
what healthcare is
it's
supposed to be
supposed to
about,
be.
right? So you wouldn't go see a therapist and stay with a therapist who isn't supporting you. You
That's
wouldn't go
true.
to you
That's
wouldn't go to an
interesting.
ortho doctor who's going to do a surgery and doesn't support at all and understand like where you're coming from as a client. Like when bedside manner sucks, people leave and they go get a second opinion. You wouldn't go see providers that aren't going to meet you where you're at. But yet, for some reason, in this world of psychiatry and prescribing, we stay with providers who are not listening to us. And I don't know why the fuck we do that, but I'm on my high horse for a second because it
No, but
it happens.
that is a
So
fascinating
here's the deal.
conversation
Find
because I
somebody, guys. There is
yeah,
providers are a dime a dozen. Just like psychologists and therapists are go shop. Damn it. Like, shop around.
Well, in particular, because most psychiatric medications aren't
Correct.
prescribed by
It's usually your general
psychiatrists.
providers, your OBs, your
Yeah,
family doctors, your nurse
which is why I
practitioners.
say go to your
Go
prescriber, not to your
Correct.
psychiatrist, because usually it's
Go
somebody
go
not
find
a
somebody else. I've had
psychiatrist.
2 clients in the
Mhm.
last month that left their prescribers and went and got a different, and they were both, one was seeing an OB and one was seeing a general medical family practice doctor. They went and got new people. Shit, I went and got a new
Yeah.
person. Like, it's and I'm still in the process, and I'm
It's
done with it.
not
I'm so sick of it.
Just so people know, it's not always
Yeah.
that easy, to find
Yep.
somebody new, but if you need to do
Mhm.
that, like, do that. This is why building your
Yes.
team is important. You do that
Yeah.
before you even
These
start the taper.
conversations
You
happen.
know who's on
These
your
conversations
side.
happen
Mhm.
earlier. So you find your taper team, which
Yes.
is Terry was saying, you build this team, which is not only going to be support people in your life who are willing to listen to you and understand like what deprescribing is. One of the things you don't want to hear
Mhm.
someone going through this is, well, I know you're really struggling right now, Terry, and maybe you need to go back and
Mhm.
see your doctor and go back up on your meds. That person, one, needs more education, or two, is not someone to have on your taper team. These aren't the things we want to hear. So you
Right.
pick people who you can educate and who are willing to just like validate and listen and support you. That's important. But then you also need people that are not in your immediate environment, but your doctors, your prescribers. Um, that's
Mhm.
very important. Whoever you're working with deprescribing on needs to be a part of your taper team, like people like Terry and I.
So And also, I think, I usually tell people to take a trip to your local
Yeah,
compounding
that's the next one.
pharmacist,
Yep.
and Yep, this is
Yep.
the next one because I think that's another place that we feel like we don't have a lotta influence over because you get it, the prescription goes in and
Yeah.
you pick it up, and that's pretty much the extent of it. I tell people, find a
Yep.
local mom and pop compounding pharmacists. They're
They are.
everywhere. The big box ones aren't as helpful because they're slammed all the time. Not saying that the local ones aren't, but I feel like the local ones are more apt to
Mhm.
educate and listen and whatever. Go have a conversation with your compounding pharmacist to see what the best way to either
Mhm.
recompound your medication, make a liquid
Yep.
form, or even possibly teach you how to make your own liquid form if you don't feel
Yeah.
comfortable, doing that
Yeah.
on your own. So go have somebody teach you that.
And don't rely on
Um
your prescriber to do this. I made the mistake of that, and
Right.
I think a lot of the people we see make that mistake. Once you're at a space of, like, starting this process, you can actually look at what tapering could look like in terms of a liquid. First, you gotta find out if it comes in a liquid. Is there a dissolvable form? Are there
Mhm.
strips? Like, there's lots of options that are out there, most of which you're not gonna know unless you have a direct conversation with the pharmacist. So that's something that I did. I
Mhm.
had to switch pharmacies because mine was not a compounding pharmacy. Um,
Right.
they didn't have the
Yep.
ability to do it. The second one I went to did, but they didn't take like GoodRx programs or programs that help pay for some of these prescriptions. Okay. So I had to go to a different one because the
Right.
cost was astronomical. So what you got to do is
Right.
you start to do that. You can call around, you can talk to these pharmacists, they can tell you that. So what you've got to do is you start to educate yourself on the type of drug you have. Is it a powder? Is it a pill? What forms does it come in? Because you will have to get to a space for most of these drugs where you're going to have to compound it into a liquid form, which essentially means taking that drug and it being mixed with water, which is how they do this, and they
Yep.
compound it, the milligrams per milliliter that are in these drugs. So that's part of your taper
Mhm.
team. So to not spend too much time on that, but that's part of the team that
I
you
think
got to
that's
have.
I think they're the
You
most
have to
important
dial it
part
in before you
practically.
start, because
Yeah.
and there are
Yep.
options, guys. Even if you don't, can you like pull beads out? Can you weigh beads?
Yep.
Can you get yourself a jewelry scale? Can you shave powder? Can you mix beads with food? Yes, these are all options. You can make your own
Yep.
compounding liquids, but this is good research to do on the front end, so that you know what those options are.
Well, I think doing that for some people, feels way better than fucking around with your
Oh, it's
pills,
so
like,
nice.
like,
It's
it's
so
such an
it
arduous
is.
task, like,
It is.
it's very tough, and it's one of the
Mhm.
things that I think can stop people from moving forward because it takes so much
Yep.
effort. So if you can outsource that
Mhm.
effort to a compounding pharmacist, I would say
Yeah.
try that.
If the drug allows it. Yep.
That's what I would be
Yep.
doing that. I would definitely be doing that. Yeah. So I would say give that give that a good try,
Okay.
so because even Jen, you've talked about even though you do get your liquid
Mhm.
compounded, that sometimes you're like, oh, all I do is think about,
Mhm.
the little syringes and all
Yeah,
this
it's
like
too
so
much
much
mind
on your
fuckery.
mind.
I know,
It
there's a lot. I
is.
mean,
Yeah.
I'm married to
There can
these
be a lot.
syringes that are in all my drawers every single night that I have to like, "Okay, who am I gonna pick tonight? Okay, here's your 1 milliliter, here's your 10 milliliter." Like, it's
Right.
yeah, so there's a whole that's a whole other piece to it, but I think you can work through it, and sometimes, yeah, it's, we don't wanna go down that rabbit hole, but yeah, that was part of the mind fuckery that happens, and Jen, are you really
Mhm.
having withdrawal because you know every time you change the dose, should because you're
Yeah.
you know
Well, I wanna make this clear too, that you can even experience some withdrawals from changing how
Forms.
the
You can
form
have
of
guys, you can have
medication,
withdrawal
right?
from the
So
form,
yep,
you can also have withdrawal from, the source of the drug. So you can go ahead and get one pharmacy that uses a certain drug company, and if they switch
yep,
and use a different one, or you get on a generic that's actually made in another drug company, you can also experience adverse reactions from that. That is a real thing, so
yep.
mhm.
Yes, and I think that's something that we don't talk about enough. It gets dismissed a lot. Well, it's the
Say
same
it's just
thing,
the
so it should
off-brand.
yeah,
It's just a different color. We just got it from
right.
a different manufacturer, Jen. That's the one I've heard.
Mhm.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. What I'm experiencing is real. So, mhm.
Is real.
Yeah.
Mhm. So, it with that in mind, when someone switches, I'll just say
Mhm.
form. So, if you go from your capsule or whatever to a liquid
Yes.
form, you're gonna wanna stay on the exact same
For
dose
a
for a
little bit. Yep.
while on that
I
liquid
always
form.
suggest that to
Mhm.
people. A lot of them don't want to, and that's
Yep.
fine. Like, you don't have to.
No, they wanna
Everything
get
is just
started,
a
like, "I've got
suggestion.
it, and I wanna go."
But once we get
Exactly.
taper team dialed in, then here comes this idea of the next step, which is, and Terry and I are going to talk about this, but we're going to give you guys the kitchen sink. These are Terry's words, and I love it. I use it. She should just like you should like brand that. But it's this idea of we're going to give you like what works the most effectively. And there's options within it. You don't have to do all of these things, but damn if you do it, you're going to be way more well prepared. And we are talking
Mhm.
about doing lab work. We are talking about doing some functional medicine work at this point with functional labs.
Yes. So I like to give people the opportunity to also like go to their doctor again and do, if you haven't done a physical exam, like a
Mhm.
yearly physical, do one. Like this would be a great time for you to do that with all the labs that come with that. So your CBC and even cholesterol, like do it
Quick
all. And
metabolic
then Jen
panel.
and I will a
Mhm.
metabolic panel, right, micronutrients, even get your thyroid
Yep.
checked, like so do it all so that we have lots of data, and I talk about this with people, like, a lot so much of this is collecting data, especially in the early days. If the more data we have, the more informed decisions we can make around
Yep.
that data, okay? So if you're coming back and you've got some micronutrient problems or even I'll just say even vitamin
Mhm.
D, like if your vitamin D is
Yep.
super low, you can be damn sure we're going to be accounting for
Yep.
that in your
Mhm.
taper. Because that could be the reason why you feel like shit anyway. So, and you don't need more meds. Maybe you need vitamin D,
Yeah.
right? So, these little bits of information can yield really good results for you when we actually look at them in functional lab ranges, I'm going to say, because there's a difference between Western medicine within
Yep.
range and functional medicine optimized ranges, and there's a big difference between these two
Yes.
things. I'll give the example of vitamin D for a minute. So where we live, everyone's low in vitamin D, but you know what? The elderly people in Florida are super low in vitamin D as
Well,
well.
but vitamin D, production
So
also decreases as you get older. The body
it
produces
does
less.
because of your
Mhm. Yep.
hormones. Yes. So, but nobody takes
No,
that into account. So anyway, so that's why I'm saying this, because even if you live in a very sunny state all year round, your vitamin D still
That's
could be
yep.
very low. So your vitamin D ranges look like, I think it's like 34, 35 is where they start within range, and it goes up to 100.
Okay.
That's your within range. Well, that is a really large range. Okay. But optimizing is like 80 to 100. So if you're sitting down at 34,
Yeah.
35, and you feel like you've got low mood, low
Mhm.
energy, you've got a ways to go to optimize that vitamin
Yes.
D. So yeah, so that is one real, I think, a good example of like this range is so important. And if you're 34, you're almost out of
You are,
range,
and you might be somebody who actually does feel so much better, right? They say like an optimal range is between, like 40 and 70 or something, but you may be
Mhm.
somebody who you can be at like 60 or even 65 and you still don't feel well. So we need to bring
Right.
you up to a higher range,
Mm.
and we play around
Right.
with that because you might be out of that range, but that's the difference, as Terry is saying, between like functional optimal. I mean, we look at optimal levels for people and how they feel versus here's what a range
Right.
says. Thyroids,
Mhm.
thyroid, the story of so many
Oh,
people with thyroid issues, right there. You talk about Western medicine and the optimal range.
hand raised
There
right
you
here.
go.
Hand
Mhm.
raised. Yes. Yeah, because if my thyroid were, I think it goes up to 4 or something like that, the TSH, if it's 4, they'll say, "Well, you're
Mhm.
within range." If I was a 4 or even a 3 and sometimes even a 2.5 for TSH and thyroid, I would be
Yep.
napping all day. But I would be told, "Well,
Your
you're
normal
fine.
range.
That's within range." But that's not within my range. And so again, so much of this is like reclaiming a sense of
Mhm.
yourself and understanding. And oddly, this is so odd that when we're talking about vitamin D, it is one of the labs that you literally have to
Yes.
ask for. It's not included in a typical panel
Mhm.
for a physical exam, which is mind-blowing to me, like, because it's so
I
important for
know.
so many things, but you have to ask
I
for
know.
it. So, Jen and I will give you a list of labs, like the extra labs, to make sure that you
Yep.
have when you go to your physician's office and ask for those, and sometimes they get denied, which is also weird to me. Why would you deny someone a vitamin
Which
D
you
lab?
know
I
what?
have
Which
no
doesn't matter
idea.
because guess what? We got options for you.
Doesn't matter. We can I
You got
Yep,
$50, we'll take
exactly.
care of
Like,
it for
we
you. Like, we
ex
will.
exact
That's
it's
what I
not
ended up
hard.
doing,
It's
like,
not hard.
whatever. Like,
Yep, it's not hard to find
it is what it is. We'll
alternatives.
run the HSA card
Yep,
and here we go. Let's do a
yeah,
lab. So there are options, but the other
yep,
thing to say about
yep,
this before we, move on to some of the other areas is there are options for also assessing symptoms and how you are feeling that if functional medicine and
mhm,
doing lab work in this way is not an option for you, okay? Because not only can you do
right,
it through your doctor, but like Terry was just saying, this is something that you can do through us as well. And we will put together an awesome
mhm,
report that is going to tell you all the things about your adrenals and some of your hormones
mhm,
and your
yep,
main neurotransmitter pathways, right? Serotonin, dopamine, GABA, glutamate, all the things, right? We can do that.
yeah,
It's a thing.
yeah, even things like histamine and glycine, we can look at all of these neurotransmitter
Yes.
levels. These are called functional labs, and it's interesting because I get this a lot too, like, "Well, can't I go to my doctor and run these labs?" I'm like, "You can ask them about them, but they're not gonna be knowledgeable
They
of
don't
functional
actually
lab
know
work."
they exist,
They don't get
guys.
it. Yeah, they don't. They don't know it, which is funny.
I've
Like,
had
how do
yeah,
you
I
not
just
know it?
had
But
that just had
anyway.
a client tell me that my doctor
Mhm.
says you can't measure serotonin, and I'm like, I pull out my
But
report
you
and I shake it in
can.
front of my camera. I go,
Yeah,
here's mine. Yes, you can."
right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, and your cortisol throughout the
yes.
day. Like, again, these are functional. So when we say functional, Jen and I are not looking for
Nope,
disease states. We're looking for how your brain and
yep.
body is functioning. So
So
that's the
there's
easiest part.
options. Mhm.
Yeah, because here's the thing. I'll just say this. We can also do checklists, which is what Jen was talking about, like mood checklists and things like that. However, the one big thing is this: low serotonin and high serotonin have
Same
almost the same
symptoms.
symptomology.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, And also, like, where is your anxiety coming if you have anxiety, where is your anxiety coming from? Is it because you have low GABA or high
Right.
dopamine? You know, or high
Serotonin. Yep.
serotonin or low
Mhm.
serotonin, like, right, all
Yeah.
these things. So, if we don't know why, it's very difficult to direct care in
Yeah.
that way. So, again, the checklists are okay, but they're a little bit better than complete
Mhm.
guesswork, but they're not as good as functional
Yeah.
lab work. So they're again, good, better, best, good enough,
Right.
right?
That's
So
just it. So
right.
there are options.
Exactly.
There's options within it.
Mhm.
So that's kind of like the next step for this, right? After you get the taper team dialed in and you're understanding who you've got on there, then we go to
Mhm.
functional lab work or subjective assessment work, going to your doctor, getting some labs done at your doctor so that we have
Mhm.
data, so that we can actually use some
Yep.
data to move to like the next space of this, which is then looking at what kind of things do we need to possibly supplement with?
Yeah.
Yep,
Your plan
we create the
creation.
plan, right? That lab work
Mhm.
can tell you a lot about which areas also of like those mental health pillars that we talked about in the last episode we need to focus on. If you're somebody whose cortisol is not optimized at all and you are waking up with very, very little cortisol, right? And throughout the day,
Mhm.
it just keeps dropping. Okay. That's going to tell us
Yeah.
something about what we need to focus on with you. Um,
Right.
if your norepinephrine's not converting to epinephrine because it requires that to do that, right? Then you're
Mhm.
not only is your dopamine channel messed up, but this is why sleep looks the way it does, and it's all interconnected, guys. So then we can actually
It's
it's
mind-blowing
it's
the
all
connection
interconnected.
when we
It
make
is. It
it.
just is,
Mhm.
right? So nothing is
Yep.
siloed in this process. In the world of functional medicine, nothing is ever siloed. So we look at, are there supplements that could be helpful? Are there nutrient deficiencies that are occurring that we need to work with via supplementation, via
Right.
food? Could amino acids be actually helpful for you at this point? Because you're not
Right.
your dopamine pathway is not looking good. And we might need to work a little bit on not only getting your cortisol in a good space, but also you might need some L-tyrosine to start kicking that pathway up. Um, it's all
Yes.
interconnected.
Or
Or
bringing it
bring it
down,
down.
like, not tyrosine
Yeah.
for bringing it, but bringing it
Yeah.
down again. So, this is that piece where if we don't have this information, we can't create a very customized
Yeah.
plan for you that you're gonna feel. And I tell people, like, you're gonna know when it's right. Like, you're gonna know when we have everything dialed
Yep.
in and correct. And with that, like, I also think the functional lab work. This isn't an advertisement for functional lab work, but this is. Oh, I also feel like it's so important because once we can see it, then we know exactly what
Yes.
supplementation for you to
Yes.
use and what's going to hit the hardest. Without that information, people get a lot of supplements just kind of
They
thrown
do.
at them. And they don't understand their reasoning behind. And so I think that's one of the places that Jen and I do really good work is that we'll say, like she said, tyrosine. Tyrosine is really good for that dopamine pathway. Remember your lab work said your dopamine looked like this. Tyrosine will help improve that pathway, and you should get a little bit more giddy up and
Mhm.
drive. And people then are like, "Oh, okay, that makes
Yep.
sense." Or let's say all of your neurotransmitter pathways are low, like your big ones. Like, all right, we need to not only maybe supplement, but improve your protein intake a
Mhm.
lot. So it gives us just so much beautiful
Yeah.
information. And I always talk about this as being an art form. This is the art. Like,
Mhm.
this is the art. Like, and so there's also this piece that can feel overwhelming. And Jen was talking about that kitchen sink idea. So I get a little too giddy and a little too much. And so I'll create these
I
reports
was
that
so
are like,
overwhelmed the first
what
time.
the
First
fuck
time
is this?
the
Like,
first report I ever had from Terry, because I've done all this, guys. I've done this whole thing. So everything
yes.
we're talking about, like kitchen sink, I was like, well, fuck it. I'm gonna do it. But the first time
Right.
I actually saw my labs, which Terry was actually doing a training for myself and for some of our other colleagues.
Mhm.
And she's like, can I use you as a subject matter? And I'm like, well, sure. I mean, I haven't seen my labs anyway. So let's look at the report. And I just sat there like open mouth breathing. I'm like, I can't even follow fucking things she's saying right now. Okay. but
which is hard for
no,
me because I'm like, I get
I
so
overgive,
excited
but
about
that's how I
sharing
am.
all
I
the things.
overgive clients
Yes. I
information, and then I see this
Yep.
gloss look on when I'm doing consulting. I'm like, I'm giving you way too much shit. Okay, let's slow down,
Yeah.
right? But we have the ability to do either baby steps or here's the whole kitchen sink. But the beauty of this is you could
Mhm.
take the whole thing and you pick the areas you want to start on. And this is super important when you're also looking to like to taper your medications, because I hate to tell you
Mhm.
guys, but when you start tapering off, it can change how these levels look. It can change how you metabolize things in your body. Now, we're not in there to know
Mhm.
all of that, but if we've got some data that we can use to try to optimize how we're doing it, and to, I don't know, maybe decrease
Right.
the likelihood that you cause harm to your brain and body or go through some significant
Right.
withdrawal, why not? Right?
Yes. Even just your very basic foundational pieces of supplementation can be so
Yes.
important. If you don't wanna go to the next step and use, like, amino
Mhm.
acid therapy or whatever, like, just those basic foundational pieces can bring you so
Let's
much
give people that
relief.
package, the top, like, 5 or 6. We've talked about this before when it comes to
Oh, the
supplements.
supplements?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So, well, I mean, you can help
Yeah.
me out with this too, but my non-negotiable number 1, I think you're probably gonna know which one I'm gonna
Probably
say. My non-negotiable number 1 is omega-3 fatty acids.
I know. I didn't wanna
It's
say it out
just like,
loud because 'cause I'm like, we
yes.
could not agree on this, but yes, yeah, and
Yeah,
that's fine, we don't have to,
yeah.
right? But yes, omegas,
No, 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 but I'm sure our top 5 are gonna be
probably.
similar, but that if you don't do anything, like and I'm talking about a super high quality
Yes,
omega-3 fatty acid, not a buy one, get one free at Costco, because 'cause you're not gonna get shit from that. But I'm talking about a super high
yeah,
quality in a higher
yep,
dose omega-3 fatty acid. I think people get a little bit, shy about taking supplements as well. So, they'll be I take 1 omega-3. Do you know how many of those things I
yeah.
take
I take
3
2
a
to 3.
day? And they're
Depends,
Yes,
depends where
I
I'm
take
at. Mhm.
3. Yeah, yeah, they're good for your cholesterol, they're good for your heart, and they're also really, really good and
Right,
important for your
mhm.
brain health. So I think, again, people are kinda shy because 'cause they're
Yeah,
worried, about what's gonna happen. But this is what happens, you take 1, and you're like, "Yeah, it doesn't make a difference if I take 1 or not." I'm like, "Yeah, of course, because you need more
right.
than 1," you know?
And you'll notice, guys, you will
So,
notice, and Terry and I have talked about this, you'll notice if you take them for a while and that if you stop and if you go 4 or 5 days without them.
yes,
Your word
I
finding
can't
your
find a
word
word.
finding is shit, things get foggy,
Yeah.
your brain will either go faster or slower than the words that are
Mhm.
coming out of your mouth, you just have this, like, meh kind of feeling. Metabolically, things slow
Super
down in
weird.
the body, guys, they change because that's what omegas also help with, right? There's a cardiovascular piece, there's a heart piece, they're all so
There's an
yes,
inflammation
that's
piece, they
the other
help to
thing.
fight
Yep, yep,
inflammation, so, there's that, and if you're listening, I'm a menopausal woman. If you're in menopause, this is like a
yeah,
non-negotiable, like, do omega-3 fatty
yep.
acids, so that would be my number 1. What's
Yep,
your number
so my
2?
number 1 is that as well. Then my number 2 is a really good ass B complex.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
B complex,
and
yeah.
when I say good, right, I'm not even talking about quality. I'm talking that is a huge thing, but also like look and see what kind of B is in it. It's
The active forms is
active
what you're looking
forms.
for.
Yes. So
Mhm.
if you guys
Methylated,
yep, so
active,
when you're
yep,
looking on the
mhm.
back of your supplements, you're gonna see it's gonna say like, I don't know, pick a B, any B, B2, B3, B6, right? If there's something in parentheses after it that you can't pronounce or looks like a word you've never seen before, yeah,
That's a
go
good
for
one.
it. Yes, that means it's
Yeah,
an
go for
actually
it.
an active
Yes.
form of that B. So
Mhm. So, a
yeah,
little caveat with B complex. So, many people will want to, buy like a B6 by itself or a
yep,
B3 or B2. A really high complex, they work
they
synergistically
do.
together.
Yep.
So, you're gonna want a high quality B
Most of your B
complex. Mhm.
complexes are gonna have like a B1 in it and a B2, a B3, a
Mhm.
6 or a 7, 12.
Yep.
So these are they yep,
Methylated folate should
folate,
be in
yep,
there too
methylated
somewhere.
folate, that's gonna be your
Mhm.
B9. Your 12 is your cola. There you go, that one. See?
Methylcobalamin.
I can't even say the words, you got it, right? The words you can't pronounce that are afterwards, that's what we need. Yeah.
Those are
So
good. Yeah.
it's a toss up because for me, it's going to be between the B and the D for the second.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah, vitamin D. I'm thinking about the ones that I take every
D
day,
is
and I
key.
take omega
Yep.
3 and I take
Every
vitamin
day.
D.
Mhm.
And again, so I just happen to have a little bit of genetic information for myself. I don't, uh, I'll say hang on to vitamin D very long in my body. It's gone. Like I need higher
Yeah.
doses due to some genetic SNPs that I have.
Hmm.
So I take like people are gonna freak the F out on this. I take
Yeah.
20,000 IUs throughout the winter and about
Yeah.
10,000
I
IUs all
take
summer
about
long.
10 to 12.
Um,
That's my average. Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so this is the part where I say, like, I think a vitamin D lab is about 50
It
bucks. I know for some people that's too much, and I get it. But again, go back to your doctor, keep asking for it. I tell people, especially in the first year when you're figuring out your vitamin D level, go in every 3
Mhm.
months, and just get it checked, see where you're at, so you're on top
Mhm.
of it, or you know if you need more or less in
Yeah.
between. So every 3 months, and that'll hit all the seasons. So that'll be good. So yeah,
Yeah.
vitamin D. So we have omegas, B complex, vitamin D3. Oh, let's see. Number 4. I know what my number
Yeah.
4 would be. Do
I could
you
tell
do
you.
you know
I'll
your
say
number
mine. I don't
4?
know if it's yours or not, but mine's magnesium.
Yeah, that's gonna be my number 4. Yep, that was gonna be
This was
it.
not pre-planned, guys. Like you might think it was, but yeah, Terry and I are not gaslighting you right now. Like this we didn't go through our list beforehand. But no. Oh, she lost her microphone. She be out. I can't hear you. This happens sometimes, but so magnesium is a huge thing for well, essentially hang on guys. I'm watching Terry and she's trying so hard to get in it, but I can't. She has no
I got it.
volume. Oh, there she is. She's back.
I don't know
Just
what happened.
I'm
Sorry.
distracted by her. So, magnesium is responsible for over like 600 functions of the body. It's unbelievable the amount of power that magnesium has. Now, I take a powder form of magnesium, and Terry and I've talked a little bit about this before, but there's different forms of the supplements that
Mhm.
you can take, right? Your most effective ones are going to be those that are going to be at some kind of a liquid form. Okay. If you can get it, not all of them come in that, right? But
Right.
like,
Well, I wanna just share about the reasoning for that.
yep,
So, liposomal forms are the best form of anything. Something a liquid drops, I mean, powder to liquid drops, dissolvable in your mouth because
yes,
if we can get that absorption to begin in your mouth and almost bypass your stomach area because most people have
yes,
such bad stomach issues, you're
yes,
gonna get more bang for your buck when
mhm,
it comes to this stuff. So if we can start that absorption right in your mouth,
mhm,
it's going to be better for you. So and
yes,
also some people are really like capsuled out. They're like, "Oh, don't give
mhm.
me another goddamn capsule or
Mhm.
pill
It's
or
it's a
whatever."
pain, it's a
So,
pain. The liquid
yep.
versions, they do cost more. The powder versions, they do
Mhm.
cost more. So if you're gonna do a liposomal form of something, they are a
That
little
one
bit
will
more.
cost more for sure.
Yes, they are
Mhm.
more expensive, but we're breaking that blood-brain barrier immediately. We were actually getting more of the contents and the compounds of what is
Yep.
in those supplements, versus if you think about it, guys, like everything has to go through the stomach, and
Yep.
it's gotta process through the organs of the body, right? And it'd
Yeah.
be great to bypass that unless you have the most optimized gut on the face of the earth, which guess what? If you're doing deep prescribing,
You
you
don't.
don't. I hate to tell you, but your gut health
Yeah.
that will be a journey you keep working on too.
Mhm.
Because unfortunately there is a lot of damage that is done from psychiatric medications
Yeah.
in the gut.
The gut health.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yep.
So that would be number 4. So number 5, I'm gonna say, specifically for deprescribing, I would say a probiotic.
Ah,
That's
yeah.
what I'm gonna
Okay.
go. Mhm.
Mhm.
Mhm. What would you do for number
Well,
5?
I was kind of going to folic acid because of how much the folates are depleted. That's one of if we're looking about SSRIs, one of the nutrient depletions that the big ones for some of these drugs is folic acid.
Mhm.
So, but some of these supplements, guys, depending on what you get, they may have some of that in there.
Mhm.
But
So then maybe I would go for a super high quality multi-mineral multivitamin,
yeah,
because
yeah,
that would
you
have that
could.
in there
Yep.
too,
That
so
one is one that sticks in the back
yep.
of my mind because when we go through nutrient depletions for most psych medications, that's like number 1 on the list.
And
Um,
B6, is it B6 or B3 is the other one that's
6.
6, yeah.
Yep.
So,
Mhm.
um, so this is the funny part because this is where we start like, well, my number 5 would be different, and so pretty soon we've got the top 10, right?
Right.
So,
Well,
like,
and
you
that's where
can
you individualize it though, right? So
yes,
to wrap us back to where we
exactly.
started this conversation
Yep.
is if you're not going to do too much in the realm of supplementation, here are like some of the basic ones for the most part that are going to be helpful.
Yep.
These ones that Terry and I just rattled off here, these 5 are going to probably be the most effective and helpful for you through a taper. But the cool part about doing some of the functional medicine is then you get to actually see what amino acids possibly we could add
Correct.
in here that might be
Mhm.
helpful to optimize some of these neurotransmitter pathways. So it seems like a lot, but something, I mean, there was one point when I was doing this, okay, where I had 12 different supplements, total
Mhm.
12 between the amino acids that I was taking and some of the other vitamins that I was taking. And
Yep.
actually, it was 14 if I add in the 2 powders of magnesium and vitamin C that I was taking
Been
in the
there,
evening.
done that,
Okay.
Jen. Yes.
However, everybody, just so you know, that doesn't last forever. Like supplements are not,
Mhm.
some you might like, there are a couple I will take forever. I will take a vitamin D
Omega-3 fatty
forever.
acids and
I will
vitamin
take
D
an
for sure.
omega 3 forever. Yes, there's
Mhm.
like 2 or 3 that I will take forever. And a magnesium. Like these will
Yep.
always be in my regimen till
Your
the day I die.
foundation.
That's
Mhm.
it. Okay. However, the 14 I was at, I now am there's only about 5 or 6 I take.
Yep.
And yes, I took them for like a year, but you start to play around with after a while what it feels like to not take them because
Yes.
your brain starts to optimize. So even in my taper, I'm still tapering everybody. I'm at 4.3 milligrams. I'm 18 months or 17, 18 months into this. I don't have to take those same ones. I don't have to take P5P all day long. I
Mhm.
don't have to take that every single day anymore. I don't have to take the L-tyrosine as much as I used to. I've been able to pull those out. I had some things that I was taking for metabolic issues that I was having. I don't have to take that anymore. So they're
Right.
not forever. So it's something to
Correct.
think about too, is because it's
Well,
overwhelming
I
sometimes with the amount of that you take. But again, hi, I did kitchen sink, everybody. Like, welcome to
Jen's
kitchen
either
sink
all
poster
in or she's
child.
not. So that's
I
just the way
know.
but that's the way I was too, like, and
Yeah.
I've done that, and when I know that my brain health is kind of faltering, I will go back on regimen, and I've
Yep.
done it before, and
Hmm.
so I'll do the kitchen sink again,
Yes.
and then I'll go off when I feel better. So that's kind of the best part, like, I wanna talk a minute about amino acids in particular because I think there's gonna be some people that don't know what the hell we're talking about when we
Ah,
say amino acid.
yep.
Um, and also this idea that amino acid therapy is not addictive. It's not dependent. There's no addiction or dependency here. You will not experience withdrawal when you stop, and you don't have to take it forever. So
Yep.
because amino acids come originating from food, particularly protein sources. So you're getting amino acids just by eating chicken,
Yes.
right? So, but if you don't have the nutrient cofactors that we're talking about, your C, your D, your Bs, like that neurotransmitter pathway, like if you're trying to make serotonin,
Hmm.
is not going to do it very efficiently. Okay. So
Yep.
that's why we go back to those foundational nutritional pieces.
Hmm.
And then you add in the medication that you're on, which is depleting actively some B vitamins and things like this, and now you know you really have to put those back in your diet in a bigger way
Yep.
while you're on, medications. You should be taking a B vitamin anyway, by the way,
Yes.
because of the depletion that
Yes.
happens.
Yep.
So anyway, so amino acids come from food sources, so primarily your protein sources. And then, so if you wanna make serotonin, like your body needs serotonin, we wanna make some serotonin, you're probably gonna start with, chicken or turkey, we'll just say some poultry, right? So your poultry, your amino acid will then turn into serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter. And then
Yes.
eventually that will break down into melatonin, which will help you sleep. So here we talk about, this big movement for people to take all this melatonin. I'm like, no,
No.
optimize your serotonin
We're just
pathway.
dumping a hormone in the body.
Right. At the
Yeah.
at
Oh,
the
no,
very
it's
last piece of
natural.
it.
It's
Yeah.
natural.
Right.
Okay, do some reading about melatonin and
Yeah.
actually
Oh,
find out. Yeah, it's
we should
it's
probably do a
out
whole
there,
episode
guys.
on that. We should
Oh,
do a
it's
whole
out.
episode, especially
Yeah,
for
we should.
kids.
It's
Yeah.
it's out there, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that's what
But
Terry's saying. Let's optimize that neurotransmitter pathway. At the bottom of it is melatonin. At the top is your tryptophan, and that's then
right.
then that converts down right to 5-HTP to
Here's
serotonin. Right.
yeah, here's the news flash about the neurotransmitter pathways when you're on medication. That neurotransmitter pathway is going to be hijacked in some way. Either the neurotransmitter is going to be super high or eventually it's going to be super depleted. So optimizing that pathway becomes even more important because you can't get something for nothing.
They work together, guys. These these
Mhm.
these pathways work together. So for example, okay, 25 years on an SSRI on Lexapro, right?
Oh,
You would
good.
think that my serotonin pathway
It'll
would
be
be all
perfect.
yeah, like
No, it'll
it
be
would just
perfect.
be yeah, you would think it's perfect, okay?
Mhm.
And then or you would think it's all fucked up. Like one or the other, right? Like
Right.
because of taking this medication and
Well,
actually
for me, because I know it's all fucked up, right? I know that. But for the average consumer, they're believing that their serotonin is
right.
right where it needs to be.
So the interesting part when you do functional medicine, guys, is for some people it's super messed up. Okay. For some
Mhm.
people, that pathway actually doesn't look bad, but their dopamine pathway
It's
is
terrible.
fucked up. So
Yep.
that was in the case of mine. So I'm thinking, well, serotonin can't be looking okay. And it was. It actually
Mhm.
was in an okay space, but my dopamine looked terrible. And not to spend too much time on this because we do have to wrap up here, but think about the idea that these pathways they work together. The body is constantly trying to figure out how to make them work together. And so when you're putting a psychiatric medication in the body, it may be maybe somewhat of helping one of the pathways, okay, but it's pulling from resources from the other pathway
Or from
to
hormones.
or from hormones, right? To
Mhm.
make that homeostatic space. It's constantly doing that. So what's interesting is you might think, well, I'm just going to go ahead and work on the serotonin pathway because I've been on SSRI for 25 years, when in fact that pathway looked pretty good for me and I was feeling pretty good in that one. It was my dopamine pathway that was
Mhm.
all the catecholamines were all messed up.
And your cortisol was pretty
My cortisol
jacked
was
too.
horrific.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Mhm.
was bad. So
Yeah.
it's kind of one of these things where yeah, what Terry and I are talking about is you can throw supplements at things, you can try it, but if you don't test, you really don't know. And
Mhm.
you can make it a lot more efficient. I don't know, like you might spend a handful of money at the beginning, but you're going to save some money in the long run on
Yes. Yeah.
supplements.
Yes.
Oh
Very
my
true.
god.
That's
Like,
really
I
true.
would have constantly been dumping in all kinds of, like, serotonin pathway things, not knowing that I was in
Mhm.
adrenal fatigue. I wasn't
Yeah.
producing cortisol, and my dopamine pathway and my GABA pathways were all
Yeah.
jacked up.
It's very
I
it's
wouldn't have
very
touched
well,
those.
it's very interesting because I do get a lot of clients actually that have been searching for answers for a while to their taper.
Mhm.
And they hear somebody talk about a certain supplement. And they're like, yes, that's the one I need to try next. And so they'll literally come in with a big box
Yep,
of
same.
supplements.
Yep.
And the idea of adding more like is hard for them. Like,
Mhm.
but usually what I do is I evaluate, first of all, I'll evaluate, like, if they have a B complex, I'll evaluate the label and be like, "Listen, if you're gonna take this, which is fine, we'll take it till it's done, and then we're gonna upgrade from there, or this is how many you should probably take to optimize this thing." Like,
Mhm.
sometimes with omega oh my god, omegas are the worst because I'll look at the label and be like, you need to take, 8 of these to get
Yep.
the same
Yep.
value as 2 of this brand over here, and they'll be like,
Yeah.
"What?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's really your choice. You can keep taking these 2 for 1, 8 of no," whatever.
Mhm.
But so I'll literally evaluate and be like, this one is optional. Like, you're not gonna get good bang for your buck with this one." So it's in the beginning, for some people, it's a lot of sorting through, some of the supplements that they've already purchased and, help them along the way. But I commend them because it just means that they've been searching for help
Yep.
and nobody has been able to put it all together for them until they get to the office. So,
Mhm.
it's supplements are a big thing right now. And so that's really what Jen and I are saying is I don't like to throw a supplement at something just for the sake of supplementing you. Let's make it count. Let's make it matter and get your best bang for your buck, essentially,
Yeah.
emotionally and financially, if you will. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So those are our big pieces that are the steps that happen before we even work on actually tapering with a
Yeah.
client. So the last 2 episodes here are all the things that are most optimal. Okay.
Mhm.
Does it mean that you have to do all of those things? No. I mean, this is you have your own agency. You can figure out how you
Mhm.
want to do this. However, we will, if you're working with Terry and I on this, these are all the options that we give you. I mean,
Mhm.
there are so many, but these are all the steps that we lead up to. And if you notice, as we wrap up here today, we didn't even talk about the actual like taper part.
Do we have to have a
Um,
part 3? Ugh.
yeah, we might have to because we didn't even touch. I'm looking down at the time. I'm like, shit, we didn't even go on the taper part. We might have to actually then do an episode just on like what the actual taper part is for everybody. So maybe we should do that. I think we just talked
I
ourselves into that.
I
Sorry.
think we just talked ourselves into doing that.
Yeah, and how that looks. So, but this
Yep.
is this is the Gaslit Truth Podcast. If you made it to the end with us, you've got Dr. Teralyn and therapist Jen, your 2 whistleblowing shrinks here, and we are also deprescribing consultants. So we help people go through this
So
process.
fun. That's the fun part
Yeah,
for
I know
me.
how
Yeah.
many hustles we have. It's like makes me tired just talking about all this shit we do. But if you made it this far, if you want to go ahead and send us your gaslit stories, please don't hesitate to do that. You can email us at the Gaslit Truth Podcast at gmail.com. You can find Terry and I in the Gaslit Truth Podcast on all the socials all over the place. And so reach out, let us know, give us some 5 stars, tell us what you think of the show, and we will see you guys next time.